Hello, I'm Gretchen Lida, and welcome to HN Reads here at Horse Network, sponsored by Equishopper. Every month, we have authors or author. In this case, we have two this week, and I'm super excited. And they come on the show and they talk about their new book about horses. And then we talk about their book and their experiences in the equestrian world. And in this case, braiding. This month, I have on the authors of World Class Braiding, Mane and Tails. They also have a second book. The authors are Kat Hill and Emma Ford, and they have braided and groomed horses from your local county fair all the way up to Grand Prix, and I cannot wait for you all to meet them. Welcome them on now, Kat and Emma. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey.
Great to be here.
Hey. So the first thing I'd like to start out with is if you could describe how you got your start. So Emma, can you start us off? Tell us a little about yourself and how you got your start.
How long have you got there? Basically, I was riding from a very young age with my parents. My dad was a big-time fox hunter, and I rode through Pony Club, got my B test, did a lot of show jumping in England before I actually came over to the States, where I started working in eventing. And I was initially in Massachusetts for 7 years, and that set me up to take on a job with Philip Dutton. And I've been with him for the past 15 years and groomed 4 Olympics, 2 Pan Ams, 4 World Championships. So I've been around the world with him and braided a lot of ponies.
And Kat, how about you?
I also grew up with horses, did the 4-H thing, and we were on a working farm. So the way that I was able to pay for my horses was to groom. And I discovered pretty early that I liked braiding and was good at braiding. So I started braiding critters pretty early. Went to college for something totally different, and then realized I couldn't survive without horses, and sort of fell back into grooming. And has sort of bopped around the industry in all areas, from Arab breed shows to eventing at the top level to dressage at the top level. Lots of hunter jumper braids, because there's a lot of hunter jumpers that braid. And I've done a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And now I am a DC for a pony club. I've got a bunch of amateurs that I teach for. And then I also still groom at the upper levels whenever I have somebody who wants me.
Fantastic. And Kat, I was wondering, is there a horse or a braid that you've done that you were like super, super proud of? Is there like a good story that you have that pops in your mind?
Of one that I was really, really proud of? Yeah, so there's lots of them. My favorite was I went to the Pan American Games with Shannon Lilly, and she had a horse who had the most gorgeous, thick mane. It's like a pony mane. And it was really hard to get his mane to look nice braided, because it always wanted to be frazzled, and he had so much of it. And his braids were spot on. So the big goal was that we wanted her to break into the 30, break into under the 30s. So I put in 32 braids, and she wasn't allowed to get a score higher than his braids. And she didn't. We ended up with gold as a team. So she was like a 28. It's her first under 30. So we credited the number of braids for that one.
Wow. We know who to call for the braids. And Emma, do you have one or, several that you're proud of? Obviously, you can only say one or two. But.
Yeah, I think, I don't know about being proud of. I was proud of forgetting. I think the most memorable one was, I can't remember what year it was, but it was in Kentucky at the M4 Star. And there had been an early morning, or at like 10 o'clock on the jog day, there was a tornado warning. And they had sent us all down to the All-Tech Arena, and they kept changing what time the jog is. And normally it would be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Like that's every, been to Kentucky for 20 years, 3 o'clock Wednesday afternoon. And so we're all hanging out in the All-Tech Arena. Some people had braided, and I was like, oh no, they're not going to change it that much. Well, we probably stay there an hour, and they're like, okay, we're going to jog in half an hour. And I was like, oh my God. And, it was just manic to get like the horse braided and looking ready for the job. So I'm not saying it was my best job, but I was proud that I actually got it braided. So.
Oh my gosh. The lightning fast.
Yes, that had to be that day.
Oh my gosh. So this is your second book together with Trafalgar. What made you both start writing books together?
Kat, you can start.
Well, it was sort of, I think, meant to happen. So I was doing a bunch of consultation after I left my full-time job. I was just sort of going to barns and setting up other working students and other barn managers. And I went to Doug Payne's barn and set up one of his students, and I wrote him an entire book by hand of okay, girls, here's what you have to do, because he had some really, really great girls, but they just didn't really know much. So I set up here's your daily schedule, here's the things you need to check on the legs, wrote up the whole thing for him. And then he wrote a book, and the publishers, Trafalgar Square, said to him, we would really like to update our grooms book. There hasn't been a new book about grooming, a really general, the go-to manual in a long time. And so he was like, oh my God, I know the person. And he sent them, he took pictures of every page of the handwritten book that I'd made him and sent it on. And they contacted me and said, oh, would you be interested? And I said, not alone, but if I can drag my friend Emma along to do this with me, then yes, we would be interested. And it took us, I think, a lot longer than we were expecting. And it was definitely a work of work. There you go. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. But yeah, and that's how we got started with that one. And we actually ended up starting a business together based on that book, because it was such a big success, as far as so many people really want to know how to do better for their horses in all aspects of grooming. And then we did the braiding book, again, just to update with, some new techniques and new styles, and, kind of, we enjoy working together. So we're kind of kicking on with it.
Fantastic.
And I think,
go for it, Emma.
Add to that, I think we worked well together, because Kat was definitely the tech side. When Kat asked me, I was very much, I'm like, I will write, but I am not doing anything computer oriented. And I'm always amazed that we have actually stayed friends through it, because poor Kat would get all these, I would write the chapter or whatever, and I'd be like, I've lost it. I can't find it. I don't know where.
She says this, but it's really, I'm not the tech. I happen to be married to somebody who is exceptional at this.
So yeah, no, we between the two of us, we all have, I think, the right components to fulfill the need of what was required.
With your powers combined, it got completed.
Yes.
One of the things I really liked about the book is all the little tips in it. I like that there are tips, and it doesn't assume that your first braid is going to be the perfect braid, which I really liked. It's no, this is going to take practice, and here's what you do, and the pictures are all super detailed. What was one of the challenges of creating the second book, the braiding book? Emma, go for it.
Because we took a lot from the first book, from this braiding section into the second book, but we wanted to expand on that, because I know, Kat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel in today's world, there's a lot more people wanting to go with the very natural mane.
Yeah.
No one wants to pull their manes very often, very much anymore. So trying to find people, and with the different types of French braiding, and I don't even know what the braids for the long mane or thick mane. I think just finding that the time, especially, COVID obviously created a huge problem. But
there's that.
Yeah, and honestly, Kat found the time to do that. I was still stuck here in Pennsylvania, so.
Yeah, I was lucky in that my sister-in-law is our amazing photographer and is super detail-oriented, and is she was in my COVID circle, so we were able to still get some photographs and stuff done. And that's actually my 10-hand Shetland pony pictured there. So the last book, our first book, we used some really big name, really top-level sports horses. And so a lot of the photographs of this book, because of COVID, are of what were in my barn. What I had available that I didn't have to travel to go to. But it also, I think, shows that you can put beautiful braids on. It doesn't have to be a professionally groomed, because especially as a busy mom now, I think one of the things we wanted to do with the book was to let anybody have access to the braids and not assume that it's only professional grooms who are going to be able to do it. So how to help amateurs, how to help kids, how to help moms who maybe don't have as much time, be able to turn their horses out the way they'd like them to look.
Fantastic. So one of the things that, Emma, I'm going to start you off with this one because you mentioned it when we were off screen, but talking about mane type. So what should we know about mane type when we're braiding?
For me, and I will say right out, like, Cat is definitely the one that can deal with a lot of tricky manes. For me, I'm very have to have the mane how I want it for a braid to look. So knowing how to get the right length, whether it's a thin mane or whether it's a very thick mane, if it's a double mane and it goes on both sides, how do I thin it down? For me, that's what it's all about. And sort of knowing that if you have a thick mane that you can't thin, then you need to leave the mane a bit longer than if it's a thin mane. If you have a really thin mane, then don't try pulling it. You need to teach yourself to razor the mane so that you can just keep shortening it without actually taking away any of the thickness. So knowing exactly how the mane feels in your hands and what you've got to work for, for me, is very important.
Kat, do you have something to add about?
I guess, yeah, the mane quality. I think you do learn how to deal with manes so Emma's lucky because Emma gets to take care of the creatures that she braids a lot. So she can pull and care for. I oftentimes get pulled in and I'll show up and the horse has, been terribly pulled or has been really badly braided before. And I'm a big fan of product, real big fan of product. It's amazing what some good beeswax or mousse or gel and what product you need can kind of depend on the feel of the mane under your hands. So the type of the mane can oftentimes dictate how I'm going to pre-treat. Some manes I like better wet. Some manes, if they're wet, turn into slippery messes. So kind of just being willing to try different things with different textures and not assuming that just because your normal routine doesn't work, that it is unworkable.
Fabulous. Is there, Kat, a product that you like best that you often find yourself going to?
Yes, I love, there's two products that I love and I sort of pop between them. The first is Shapley's Mane Mousse, which is awesome as your just general use. You've got a pretty decent mane, you just need a little bit of grip. But then for the really tricky manes and for the really problematic manes, I use this, what the heck is it? It's mango beeswax. It's actually a locking cream wax for African-American for braids. It's in the beauty care section of the, I don't know how to say that. At the grocery store. Yeah. Thank you. At the grocery store. I'm trying to think drugstore, and I'm like, it's not at the drugstore. It's the other one that has food too.
Yeah.
But yeah, grocery store. So it's in the hair care section of the grocery store, and that tends to be my go-to grip, and I love it.
Emma, what product? Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say that is, we have pictures of that in the book because I've been using it for 15 years. I used to only be able to find it in South Carolina, and so I used to stock up on it in the winters, but now it's up here now too, thank goodness. And Amazon sells it, so you can get it anywhere.
Does it freeze or does it do pretty good?
No, it doesn't change consistency no matter how hot or cold it is, which is very beneficial for an upstate New Yorker.
That is magical. I've definitely pulled a main product out of my tack box and it's just solid.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, not a thing, but you said bring product, so I brought product.
Oh, look, you're so much better than me.
I came prepared for this. This is what I love. This is Shapley's Mane Mousse, but in the winter, hello. I use this all the time, but in the when it's really cold at our events, I mean, it's literally just mousse.
Yeah.
but it doesn't create that super sticky feel or greasy feel. And, obviously at events, we could be in 25-degree freezing rain, still trying to braid. And, you don't want water on your hands, but this mousse is so good because you can just use it at any temperature. So that's definitely my go-to product when I'm doing my mains.
So let's move on to tools. Emma, you'll go first since you came prepared with your tools. Is there a tool? Is there a tool that you wanted to point out that horse owners should know about, or those becoming aspiring braiders should know about?
Well, I was thinking about this, and ultimately, how you braid is going to dictate what tools you use. So now I would say any braider though should add a crocodile clip. I don't know where my camera is. So honestly, that's if I end up at a show without one of these, I'm like, oh my God, I can't cope.
So let's go into Walgreens.
Yes. And, even the dollar store if we have to. So that is, I think every braider has to have one of these in their braiding kit. But then it really does come down to whether you're using yarn, or if you're using rubber bands, all you need is your crocodile clip, or some people like the 4-pronged comb that evenly separates out, but like partitions out the braids. I tend to just use this. I'll just use this so I don't have too many things needing to be in my pocket or attached to myself, so I can just count the number of spikes, or the prongs, I guess you want to call these, on the hair, and that's what decides how thick or thin partition I'm going to take. So
fabulous. Kat, is there a tool that is like your go-to tool?
Lots of what Emma said. My go-to is actually a very fine tooth comb. I buy them in the big multi-pack at the store, the little black combs that have very fine teeth, because you can smooth the mane so much nicer with those. So even if I've got a really thick mane, I'll always comb down the top part with that. And I like it because I can create real clean, crisp lines in between each braid, because it's got like the end point. If I had it to show, it would be helpful.
I'll see if I have one in my box on that, but I don't think I do.
But yeah, so that's sort of I always have one of those in my back pocket when I'm grooming or when I'm braiding.
Fantastic. And what is it? So when you're at a show, if it's a horse you've braided or even not so, what do you look for, or what impresses you in a good braid or a good neck?
Sorry, hold on. Wait, so I guess what I'm always looking for is, ultimately, I want the braid to make the horse look nicer. And so what really impresses me about a braid is and some of this tends to get a bit innate, but like, rather than having each braid be exactly the same size down the neck, does it enhance sometimes like some smaller ones near the top and then a little bit bigger through the middle, and then tapering off a little can give the horse a little bit of like a horse who's got a bit of an upside down neck. It can help create a little fullness. I like that I really like it when the braids just make the horse look nicer, so that almost, not to say that the braids aren't the focus of it, but that when you look at it, you think, oh, that horse is really, really lovely. I do, really crisp lines in between each braid. Flyaways are like my nightmare. And I always feel like when I braid, there's flyaways, which is probably why I love goop so much and like mousse so much, because I like to tidy everything down. But yeah, it's really just about how does it enhance the shape of the neck and how does it look on the horse.
So it's a lot like a person, like you want it to, like the right hairstyle on a person, it should also be the same with a horse.
Exactly.
Emma, how about you? What do you look for? What makes you go, ooh, that's a good one?
I'm more thinking like, oh, that's a bad one, is when people use white tape, and I still can't believe people use white tape. I am not from the white tape fan.
Yeah. Tell us about your hatred of white tape.
If you want to use it, you have to be extremely good at braiding and have extremely even braids, correct size. And I like exactly what Kat says. Like it should enhance the mane and the neck. But I always encourage people to it doesn't matter what style or what you are using, as if do whatever you are competent at and have a nice outcome. Don't try something new just because you so and so does that. And I think we've got friends that use rubber bands at the 5-star level, and you wouldn't even know that they're rubber band braids, and they're just immaculate. So for me, I'll always, as I say, white tape's the first thing to catch my eye, but just how tidy they are going down the mane. I like mine to sit more into the crest. You do see a lot of people that they tend to sit on top of the crest, if that makes sense. And I personally don't like that look, but then that's just me, so I think it looks a lot tidier when they sit down low on the crest.
Emma, you already kind of talked about this one, but you'll start this one first. What is the most common mistake that you see, or that you do, or that you've watched other people do?
I think trying to not understanding how important it is to have a tight braid is probably one of the biggest things. I feel, especially through our clinics, like, so many people like, yeah, I can braid. And then they start braiding and you're like, oh no. And they don't understand how tight, especially the top, 3 to 4 twists need to be to make a really nice tidy braid. And yes, there are some styles that those first few twists actually have to be a little looser. But in general, if you're teaching yourself to braid, really practice on how tight it is. Kat, you can spend on that one.
Yeah, so I mean, same thing. Like the braiding down is so important that if you can't braid that down, and if you can't, so one of the things we do in the clinics is we give people yarn not attached to anything, and they have to be able to braid it tight, because oftentimes people only they try to be tight by pulling down, which doesn't actually make the hair tight. It just irritates your horse. So it's all about learning how to make the braids kind of come across this way instead of down this way, to be tight. The other thing I think people make a huge mistake of is they do not give themselves enough time to braid. Braiding is extraordinarily time consuming if you're not doing it all the time. Even myself, I get picked on when I go to the shows now because it takes me a long time to do a nice neck, because I'm not doing it every single day. I still braid a lot, but I'm not braiding the numbers that I was braiding when I was a full-time live-in groom. And it makes a big difference when you're braiding, 8-10 horses a weekend, every single weekend, you get really fast. Whereas now, to do a decent braid job, it's going to take me 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the neck. And yet a lot of the amateurs that we'll meet will only give themselves 45 minutes. Well, if it takes me 45 minutes to do a nice job, it's probably going to take you longer unless you're really much more skilled than I would guess, so just giving the time, because I think oftentimes you'll see at competitions, the first few braids look really nice and then they get sloppier and sloppier and sloppier. And I think people start looking at their clock going, oh my gosh, I have to go. My class is at this time. They're calling for my division, whatever it happens to be. So just taking the time so that you can be, patient and slow in your process as you're learning, especially, but even once you're learning and you're just maybe not practicing all the time.
So Kat, you're kind of it's making me picture, you ever seen Great British Bake Off? Mm-hmm. It's the end of their
yes.
whatever it is they're making. It looks totally. The first part they did is beautiful, and then the last is bleh,
yes.
all about making you have.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is funny. I watch the Great British Bake Off all the time, and I'm like, this is just like grooming, only with food.
I was thinking about that, and I'm just like, that's strange how much those are alike.
It really is.
What do you find the most rewarding about braiding? And Kat, you'll take this one first.
I think sometimes it's really neat to see the transformation in a horse. Especially maybe not your really upper level sport horses, but the first time you braid up a 4-year-old and you take it to its first show, and they just look so lovely. And I think that it's it's like a bit of a makeover, right? Like they go from being these wild woolly things to looking so sleek. And I will also say there is something about, especially when you're braiding at the ridiculous early hours of the morning, there's something very calming and connecting about standing and braiding with a horse who is enjoying it. There's been a couple horses that I've groomed over the years that just seem to really enjoy it. You don't have to tie them; they just stand happily in their stall. And it's always nice to have that time with them where you're just dedicated to stand with them. And I think that can be really rewarding. Where if you let it not be frustrating that you have to be there doing this and you could go do other things, if you have that time to just be in the stall and experience the horse for the amount of time that you're standing there, that can be a really nice connection with them.
Lovely. Emma, what do you think is the most rewarding?
Honestly, I can't add more to what Kat said. I honestly feel the same way. It's just, you take that initial horse that maybe has never been braided and you're like, wow, they're now he looks special. It's sort of, I always sort of, I'll joke with the girls in the barn, like, when a horse goes out and does his first competition and, does well, I'm like, yes, the braids made him feel special. It's like they know that he knows he was doing something special that day.
Like his first day of school clothes.
Yes, exactly.
A note to our audience: if you have any questions for Emma and Kat, please put them in the comments box. We would love to answer them. We love questions. Fantastic. You kind of covered this a little bit, but let's see if we go to a little bit of a different angle because I think it's entertaining. Is there something that you find cringy that you see somebody do when they braid? We know white tape. We know going.
I'm going to go ahead and say the unicorn forelocks. Make me a
Tell
crazy
me
person.
all about the unicorn
I
forelocks.
cannot deal. So forelocks are like my thing. That I grew up showing breed show Arabs who have these really, really long forelocks. So to get them nice, you really have to like tuck them all in because they've got those really fine heads, so you can't have anything bulky. And so it's like one of those pet passions of mine that I love a really lovely forelock. And I can take like a Frisian's forelock down to their nose and I can tuck it up and make it all tidy and lovely without having any lumps. And so it makes me a bit crazy when they have they braid it, they just like start braiding like here. They don't French braid and then they just like have like a ball. right in front, like it's right where you see, like it's right. The first impression you have of them is that they have this sort of lumpy little unicorn. So that's not my favorite. That being said, if they're a child, I do not cringe at anything that a child has done because I think I would rather see terrible children's braids than a professional braid on a pony. Mm-hmm. But if you're above the age of 10, you're not going to kill me.
Yeah, I think for me, I am with Kat on that one, but it's not necessarily the braid, but it's actually the people that have taken the bridle path and like cut a good hand's width down the bridle path, like half the neck off, and then they've also cut the withers, and then you've got the braids in between. And I just think it ruins the entire picture when people do that. And the thing is, when the breeds do that, I think, am I right, Kat, and the Arabs you're not braiding the mane.
Right.
So it doesn't look so ridiculous. But like if one of my pet peeves are people that take so much of the bridle path, back, and then you just like, you could have got another 4 braids probably and elongated the neck with those braids, So
I'm laughing a bit because I just got a sales horse back that went out on trial and she trimmed and she did and I do think people were taught this, where they pull the ear down and then like trim to the end of the ear, which is like,
that's long. A lot.
It's a lot. And
yeah.
He went so perfectly groomed and he came back and they'd done it with scissors. So he has this like,
oh. Well, if you think like Happy's ears, like that would be
yeah. Like his entire neck.
Well, the Mighty Nice, one of my top horses, his ears are super long. If you use that method, it would literally be like half the neck. So I would not recommend that method.
No, don't do that method. It's really not our recommended method.
No.
Okay, Kat, now you have to tell us what makes a good forelock.
Well, anything. So what I love a good forelock, and I like forelocks that have a lot of natural shape. I don't like forelocks that are cut across. I like them to kind of have like a nice V, so that then when they're braided, I like to leave a hollow in the middle and then tuck it in so that it just has these nice little lines across, and it's all you see is the top braid. You don't see any underneath, and you don't see any rolls or anything. It just looks like it's braided to here, and then it disappears. And so that you really get to just see the horse's face, and the forelock becomes a sort of just a background for their face. And I'd actually, if you've got a really long one, it's fine if it has like a little bit that kind of goes below and just has a little flat loop. That's acceptable. But I just like it to be really discreet. Like I like a forelock braid to really kind of almost disappear, and I like those lines to be really almost parallel, where they come across like this. And so instead of the braid having those V's on the forelock, they just come in like this, and then it tucks in underneath.
Excuse me. These are super technical questions, but I'm gonna nerd out for a second. So the first technical question is, what advice do you have? And Emma, start this one for not pulled manes, since that seems to be coming more and more.
Specific to braiding. If you're not, my main advice is if you're not going to touch, like if you're not going to touch the mane, then number one, practice. Number two, buy our book and figure out which of the long braids works for you. Is literally my advice.
That's great advice.
Advice. There's so many. I think we have 4 different types of long braids, Kat, in there. Yeah. I think, and any one of them produce a beautiful result. And we all have our own. Some of us. It's funny listening to Kat about forelocks, because I actually struggle with forelocks. I always have, and you won't often see it, but when I do a good forelock, I always post it, because I'm like, yes, I finally did. After 20 years. But like practice and figure out what works best for you and the outcome. So if you are going to keep your mane natural, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with do that, but there are, read the book, figure out a way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you can get the book on Equishopper. It is here. It is ready to be ordered.
I am going to tag in on that for a second, because one of the things that I've discovered, we've got a bunch of the kids in our pony club have horses with full manes, and a lot of the amateurs that I teach up here have horses with full manes. And if you would like to do a running braid, practice a lot, and you must not plan on it lasting, because no matter how good you put a running braid in, you have to redo it, because every time they put their head down, it stretches and the mane will bubble. So everybody, it's a really quick and easy braid to put in. So I think a lot of people think that's what they want to do if they've got a full mane. We've got a couple other styles that are in the book, because you've got to be really, really good to do a running braid that doesn't end up wavy and rippled and looking really, really bad after 10 minutes. And so there's some other techniques where, actually one of the pictures that you have is of a pony with a full mane, one of the little red pony, she has a absolutely down to her shoulder Shetland mane. And when you braid it up into the little balls, that's it. I think those stay all day, whereas the running braid doesn't. So I always suggest to people to try these. I think some people are a bit cautious about it, and they envision the running braid in their head when they think a long mane.
Yeah, I've tried that one on, I didn't master it, BT dubs. It was not mastered, but I tried that on a gypsy horse, and it looked pretty good for a first try. And I was like, oh, this is definitely more handy and does stay better than my had full if I had done a really great. Fantastic. So the book also covers tails. So piece of advice about tails. Kat, take this one first.
My big piece of advice for tails is not to kill yourself starting at the very, very, very tippy top. Oftentimes I see people trying to braid the top, 2 inches where the horse has scrubbed their tail a little bit or where there's really not a lot of hair. And then if you start with that, then that part tends to look quite bad. So I'll oftentimes smooth that down and then purposefully start just like 2 fingers below the real top. No, not far, just that little bit below where you have just a little bit more side hair to bring across to the front. Because I think it can be really frustrating for people when you're trying to braid and those first 2 twists, every time they're popping back out of your fingers or they're frazzling back out or they're shifting one way or another because you don't really have enough hair to cross in the middle. So just be that little bit forgiving to start that little bit farther down. Because if you look at even some of the really top professional tail braids at hunter shows, oftentimes they look so good because they're starting just that tiny little bit lower, where you can really grab the hair and have it come across and have it really stay nice and neat and tidy.
That's super practical. Emma, what do you think of tails?
And don't be afraid to stand on something. For me, when I taught myself how to do tails, and I sort of didn't click on straight away, but actually, get your, and obviously we're always taught don't stand directly behind a horse, but you're going to have to when you do a tail. But stand on something so you're right there with the tail at, because if you're lower down, that's when you start to drag the twist down again. So if you're not a very tall person, get a little step stool, be at the height, don't be reaching up to the top of the tail, and you'll find it a lot easier. And then obviously as you go down the tail, you get on the step stool. So that would be my number one advice. And then always plan to have a bit of time for the tail wrap for the tail to be in a tail wrap. If you do the tail, you can apply either the main mousse or some wax, whatever your product of choice is, and have time to put a tail wrap on, because it does look, that just completely tidies up all the little flyaways and stuff, and it's amazing how much more tidier it will look when it comes out of the tail wrap.
Fantastic. It looks like we have a question from the audience, so I'll read it for us. All right, so it says, my arthritis keeps me from pulling manes, but I'd like the mane short. What is a good way to keep them trimmed? Like Cleveland has a huge mane.
I'm walking because I actually have that tool in my house, I think.
Deb, we have tools for you.
Yes. So hold on, let me sit back down and then I can show it so that I'm not all blurry. Sorry. So I really love, see where my camera is. There. This is a thinning rake, and it's actually called a de-shedding tool. It's an Andis product. Ooh, wrong way. Can you see it? But it's got all these tiny little teeth inside it that are little razor blades. And so you just comb with it. And for a horse like a Cleveland Bay that might even have a double mane that's really huge, that helps you thin it out really nicely. But since it's got razors instead of the scissors, it creates an end that's more like a naturally pulled end. So it doesn't stick out as bad from your braids. And then when you want to actually use it to shorten, you hold the hair straight down and then you kind of cut this across at 45 degrees. And that's my favorite technique for shortening a mane or thinning a mane out. We have a couple other ones shown in the book that are also really great techniques, but that's sort of my go-to.
Thank you for the question. Emma, did you have anything to add? Or did
No, I'm right. That's my go-to as well.
So my next question is also because I have big, thick, curly hair myself and often deal with horses with big, thick, curly hair. What do you do with flyaways? How do you get those down? What is the best trick? Emma, I'll give you that one.
I mean, I feel we sort of covered this with, the products and making sure you smooth. So when you take your section, I think making sure you apply whatever product you're using to that section really well. And like Kat was saying, she likes using the fine comb to really smooth it into the section. If you don't start with that smooth top, you're never going to then create it afterward. So it's all about how you start that initial, how each section is created and how smooth that hair is created.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Anything to add, or did we get it?
No, she got it. I mean, she covered it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true too. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. I will say on our comment, somebody said Shoshin for flyaways. And when you're braiding with a pulled mane, especially, and you use Shoshin, it actually makes it quite slippery and can make it really difficult on your fingertips for holding down the mane. So if it works, anything that works for people works. I'm not saying if it does work for you that you have to stop, but I find it really difficult to braid with anything like Shoshin on it because I end up with more flyaways because my fingers can't get those hairs to kind of stay in the braid and stay tidy.
So I had a question about your clinics. What are your clinics like? Whoever wants to take it first.
Yes.
Go ahead, Em.
I said you both looked at me like that.
Have at it, Em.
Well, it's been an interesting year for clinics. No, so we started out. We basically are very flexible, and we offer 2-day clinics, 1-day clinics, half-day clinics, private ones. If you'd like us to come to your barn and just, if you want a gift certificate for your kid, we'll get to come and do a couple hours grooming lesson or braiding lesson. But typically a clinic, we cut up into 4 sections through the day, and we offer whoever's hosting the clinic and knows their client base the best, we offer them sections on what to cover, whether it's from leg wrapping, general stable management, braiding. What else do we offer? Icing.
Everything. Icing, leg care.
Yeah. Equipment,
Yep.
and then we take those, whatever they would like covered, we take them and sort of make up a seminar out of them for a day. And we like to keep it around 12 people because, we like it to be as hands-on as possible. And we'll teach anyone from, we'll do the 6-year-olds up through to, adult amateurs, a working student that's hoping to be a professional groom. So we're very flexible. We cover whatever, as I say, whatever that, your own clients and what they are going to get the most from. So I think we have a fun time.
Yeah, we seem to. We do. Emma and I have some sponsors that we've come to work with. And we, when we first started the business and first started doing the clinics, one of the big things that we wanted was to make sure that anybody who sponsored us, that we wouldn't recommend anything that we weren't really using. So we don't recommend anything that just somebody tells us to recommend or that we get for free or that we give out at the clinic. It's all stuff that we really stand behind. And some of that, like there's certain items of one line of product that we'll use and certain items of another line of product that we use. And our sponsors are all awesome in that they know that and they support us in the way that we recommend their stuff. But the fun part about that is that oftentimes when we come and do the clinics, we do try to showcase some of the sponsor stuff as well. And so we show techniques and we show products and we show tools, which I think sometimes people really want because sometimes there's so many products out there and there's so much stuff out there that sometimes it's nice to have us come in and be like, okay, here's the brands we use, here's why we use them. Nobody has to use what we say or what stuff we use, but I do think it adds a little bit of benefit to the clinics that we can kind of come in and say like, here's some stuff that might work for you. Here's some ideas to try. When Emma said we're very hands-on, we're really like, that's one of the things we really want is we want people to walk away from the clinics feeling like they can do it, not just that they watched us do it. So we really try to get, like when we do body clipping, we tell every single person who owns the horses of the body clipping, like, we promise we'll tidy him up at the end of the day, but don't give us a horse that's going to a show tomorrow. Because every single person who's at the clinic who wants to put their hands on a pair of clippers get to clip a horse. So sometimes they look pretty silly until Emma and I get to clean them up at the end of the day.
I think it's been so. What I love about the clinics too is like I feel that we ourselves walk away with so much knowledge because, the one thing in the horse world, there isn't going to be a day in our lives that we know everything about horses. And undoubtedly there'll be someone there that has had a problem with their horse. And, we always start the clinics with saying, nothing is black or white in the horse world. It's always gray. And, there's going to be questions that I'm just going to put my hands up and go, I have no idea about that one.
Yeah.
So we're not walking in saying we know the end all and everything. We absolutely don't. But, we always, I think, we always walk away with more knowledge because people tell us their stories. What disease did their horse get that we haven't come across yet, and I love it for that. And I really feel, people, because of the term world-class grooming, they think a little bit too much, we're teaching how to brush a horse. And they very much walk away realizing, it's more about, getting to know your horse. Like that is one of our big themes is we want you to get to know your horse. We want you to bond with your horse. It's yes, everybody can pick up a brush and brush a horse, but do you really know your horse inside out?
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I think like one of the things that I've learned makes good horsemen is the horseman that's always knows there's something else to know.
Yeah.
That's super good. So I have 2 more questions. So if anyone in the audience has questions as well, please ask. So the first one is, it's getting warmer, and it looks like it's going to be a busier season this season. Is it looking busy for you two for the summer? What's your summers looking like?
Mine is certainly, Emma's is always busy. Mine is certainly looking hopefully busier. I'm hoping to groom a little bit. I've got a couple of good friends that I continue to groom for and that I go and kind of catch groom for. And then I actually have a couple of young horses that I'm hoping to get out and compete myself, which will be fun to both groom and compete a little bit this year. And then my kids are also doing stuff. So it should be a nice and busy year. We have the Pony Club Nationals, which is our festival, which is every 4 years at Kentucky. And we will be doing, Emma might be at the Olympics that weekend. So we have a couple other grooms that we work with as well. So it might be me and Emma, or it might be me and somebody else who go down and teach at that, because that got bumped from last year to this year. And that's always a really fun time because there's a lot of really passionate pony clubbers out there. So it's fun to go and teach there. And then hopefully we'll get, kind of back into the swing of things. Emma's always in motion. So she's always busy.
Yeah, more so because now I'm slowing down. It just takes me longer to keep everything in motion. Yeah, honestly, throughout the whole of COVID, we've been very fortunate. Yes, it slowed down last year, which I think was a huge benefit to the horses and their training. And this year they've come out fighting, and the Olympics is obviously the big goal that we're looking at this year. Hopefully Kentucky in a couple of weeks, and we've got a couple of horses going there. And it really for us, it's those big competitions. We do Kentucky, and then that lets us know what we're going to do for the next month and how busy we're going to be. And if all the legs fall off the carousel, then we'll be training the young horses. So touch wood it won't. But hopefully Philip's got some really good horses, and would love for us to be able to go to the Olympics and then have one to maybe go over to Burley if God's willing. So because make sort of the year come out and the year on a big bang. And then of course we've got the big Fair Hill in Maryland is running. It's the United States second 5-star. First time it was meant to run last year, didn't because of COVID. So it's going to be very cool that hopefully Maryland Fair Hill will run as a 5-star, and that's huge in eventing for us to have 2 5-stars now over in the States. So that will be my official last competition for Philip Dutton. So putting it out there.
Wow! Yay! Congratulations. So my last question is, you have 2, this is your second book. What will you be working on next?
We're actually in the midst of working on our grooming book, but geared more for the, I think it's 8 to 12-year-old range. So a youth version of the general grooming book. really covering all of the horsemanship and grooming and all that for little hands, for little people. And so that's our next big project is to kind of, to bring everything down to that really early rider stage where it all begins.
And Kat totally has the hands up on me because she has 3 children. I have to keep asking her, is this how you speak to your children? I don't know. I am not surrounded by small children. So.
We always laugh a bit because our Emma and I, one of our initial pieces of friendship were that neither of us wanted children. And I somehow got bamboozled into having one, and then it was awesome. So I had a couple more. But Emma's wonderful with kids, and when she comes, she gets attacked by mine, and they adore her. But it'll be an interesting experience for her to have like a whole gaggle of them bouncing all off of her when we do our pictures.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
That needs to be on Instagram. I want that to be on Instagram.
What do they call those reels? Like the ones that don't get posted? What do you call those things? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The stories, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, lead over time, you're like, only a couple people are going to see that. Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see it. So that'll be all. Thank you, Kat and Emma, so much for being here. And check out the book on Equishopper. And thank you to Equishopper for sponsoring. And we will see you next month. Thank you again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.